Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lethal Weapon. A lot of things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, this whole case revolves around set of art by this dude being stolen, and a lot of interesting things about this case. For one, the reason why Avery's pushing so hard on this case is because the chief doesn't even know his name is like Captain Aisley. And they're like, yeah, you know the reason why he doesn't know my name is because of you guys. You guys aren't giving him enough of a reason. And he's like, you need to give me a win. I need a win. And he's walking away, and Bailey's like, sure thing, Captain Aisley. And Avery turns around and he's like, it's too soon, Bailey. And even Roger keeps calling her out the entire episode about being so snarky, and it's so good because she kind of laughs at Cole because she's like, oh, like, because Cole says that he's got game because he hasn't really, dated anyone else, because there's a whole situation of him trying to be good with Andrew, which Natalie was like, literally, seriously, do not do that, because he's already intimidated by you because he thinks you're some like cool action hero that I had this torrid love affair with. And so he actually tries to make things cool between him and Andrew by getting into an elevator, closing it and stopping it and backing Andrew into a corner. He's like, I'm really uncomfortable right now. He's like, yeah, that's why we need to rap. And he's like, so Game of Thrones, huh? How awesome is that show? And you can tell Andrew's so uncomfortable. I just love the series of events. And then it turns out, oh, he's got a ring. He's going to propose to Natalie. And then Cole's like, oh, it's gorgeous, by the way. It's that princess cut. And it's just so good. It's like, I love the awkwardness that Cole brings to any situation. I've been love the thing between him and a woman named Lena. Obviously, we later on learn her name is Layla. But it's just like, oh yeah, I lied. Like, I wasn't trying to like answer your question truthfully because I had a feeling that you were hitting on me and I just didn't want to deal with that. He's like, no, I legitimately just have a thing for accents, an ear for accents and stuff like that, which it turns out later on is like, no, he was kind of hitting her on a little bit. Interestingly enough, I kept wondering like why I recognize that actress. She's in the TV show The Americans. I'm pretty sure that's what I recognize her from. I feel like there's something else I might have seen her in, but definitely I think it's from The Americans. So I was like, oh yeah, it took me almost all episode to kind of figure out what I recognize. I think there was another actress I was confusing her with, because there's an actress. And just for whatever in my head, I think I'm confusing her with Alona Tall, because to me they look similar in the face, but Alona Tall has blonde hair typically. I don't know if she's ever dyed it or whatever. And it's like, oh no, this actress has black hair. So just to me in their face, they kind of look a little similar, but I'm probably at the same time as if you put them side by side, they're like, yeah, they're two completely different people, don't look alike. But that was just kind of in my head. But nevertheless, it's kind of sad because it's like, oh, there's kind of a little bit of something here. And I was like, she's going to turn out to be the bad guy. I did love that conversation of just kind of like obviously that thing where Roger and Cole's like, oh no, don't worry. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to give you the signal. And Roger, he's like, well, what's the signal? He's like, when you see, he's like, no, what's the signal? He's like, he's like, tell me. And he walks in there. He's like, is that the signal? No, is that the signal? Is that the signal? And when it's all said and done, I love it. Like, all that destruction around. I even love, like, during the struggle, Cole, like, that dude accidentally died because he slipped on his gun and fell back on a horn and everything. And it's like, oh, wow, all those paintings we were supposed to be getting are full of holes and on fire. And when Lena, Layla came in and was like, all this destruction to these paintings, Captain, and then Avery was like, Aisley, and then Cole and Murtaugh look at him like, wait, what? I love it. He plays with that so much in this episode because he wants respect. I do love that scene where it's kind of like what is it? Trish calls Roger ignores it, and then Trish turns around and calls, Avery, because Avery before him was kind of like, what was it he was saying, like, oh yeah, all this destruction you cause, but I don't have to worry about it too much because the chief doesn't even know my name, and everyone's still kind of laughing about it, and he kind of looks a little pissed, and because of that he's like, oh yeah, hey Trish, yeah, Roger's right here in front of me, I have no idea why he didn't answer his phone. And Roger's like, I know why you're frustrated, but what you're doing right now is petty. And I'm like, that's so good. But Layla ended up getting her, because it turns out what this is all about is because one of the paintings from that collection that the guy she works for, her boss, has is one of her mom's paintings, and her mom was killed years ago. And it turns out that the guy she's working for is actually, he's the one that supplied, he funds like the group that ended up killing her mom. And so this is all about the paintings, but more specifically chips that I guess the paintings were being used to kind of ship the chips back and forth, but they're chips that these people are going to use to make a dirty bomb. And so there's that whole thing. It's really sad in the end because you can tell there was kind of a bond between Layla and Cole. Well, the whole thing of like, do you always make jokes when your life's in danger? He's like, yeah, it's my way of coping. And she's like, stop coping. He's like, don't worry. My partner knows exactly what to do. And then hard cut to Roger on a boat, Lucille not being able to drive, which we also got to talk about. The fact of the matter is, how good is that plot of like Rihanna blackmailing him? That's so good. And him just kind of like, he's trying to not to be on Trisha's bad side because he's got to balance being blackmailed by his daughter because he knows that's bad and Trisha's mad at him. But it's like, Trisha's going to be even more pissed at me if she finds out I still got the boat. And I love that whole situation of being like, come on. Like, I know you feel like I undercut your authority, but if I go back on my word, it'd be me uncut my authority, which would be the right thing to do because I'm wrong. I've been wrong the entire time. And Trisha's like, good, get on that. And Rihanna's kind of milking it. And it's like, man, it shows you how dubious his daughter is to the point that she's literally blackmailing him and stuff like that, being like, thanks, Daddy, you're the best. And it's just kind of like, she's like, I love you. And he's like, you don't, kind of getting pissed because like, you don't know love because you're up here manipulating me like this. This isn't love. And then both of them ultimately getting busted. I'm curious, was Roger actually going to tell on Rihanna or not? He's like, oh, you want to know the truth? Maybe he really was about to do it, but Rihanna ratted on him first and then he ratted on her. And I love Roger being like, oh yeah, keep Lucille because all I get is grief from you people. And because Lucille's kind of like his sanctuary. And Trisha's like, you people? He's like, well, yeah, you Murtaugh people. The Merts. I'm like, what? I love that. It's actually kind of interesting when he explains it later on to Trisha. And I think it's kind of continuity thing. I mean, not really. It's just kind of an interesting thing of like, Roger, he's like, I've only ever been one place. So going out in a boat, even if I don't actually go anywhere, it's because knowing that I have it meant that I can go somewhere else if I wanted to. It kind of plays into what that argument RJ had with him one time of like, just because you've been here your entire life doesn't mean I want to do the same thing. So it's kind of like, I think it kind of plays into that a little bit. Like the fact is Roger's lived here. He's raised his family here. He's only known this one place and going anywhere else, which is interesting because I feel like that definitely is going to play into like his character later on. Obviously, it kind of plays into what I feel like the direction of his character is going to go in regards of like, I don't want to get too specific with it because it's an aspect of the show I don't really want to talk about until it like happens, but essentially just like the direction Roger's character potentially can go this season is just kind of like some outside of the show thing, you know? So like I said, I'm rather not get too much into it, but I'll get into it later potentially. So I thought that's kind of pretty neat. And there's back to that complicated situation of like, obviously, with Cole, it's like he brought in Natalie for help with the whole helping Leia situation, but doesn't explain everything to her. But it's like, he doesn't want to bring her into this because he knows like, yeah, I'm kind of helping a criminal that we're supposed to be arresting. And so it's going to come back on Natalie. And she talks about the fact of the matter is I can't. Being kind of something, I guess that's the main reason why their marriage fell apart. Like him working for the CIA and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff he couldn't tell her about. Plus, it's just, I think for Cole, just opening up to people is kind of a hard thing for him and natural. So I think like that's kind of why his relationship kind of fell apart with Natalie in the first place. So, but ultimately, when it was all said and done, Layla ended up telling Cole he needs to tell Natalie the truth before it's too late. She even kissed him, but you can tell from his reaction because he kept hiding it the entire episode, trying to pretend like, no. I don't have a thing for Natalie because Roger was kind of like, yeah, you talk about her all the time. So obviously, had a feeling like he was still in love with her, which he is. He literally says it twice in the episode that he's over the moon happy for them. I love that conversation where Layla was kind of like, to make you feel better. The fact of the matter is no woman is really in love with a man who puts people to sleep for a living. And Cole's like, oh, I've never had that problem in my life. And she's like, I bet you haven't. Just kind of like a little flirtatious nature between them. I was like, maybe I was hoping something a little, obviously I figured at the end of the day nothing was going to happen because I figured she'd probably end up still going to jail no matter what. I mean, sad because she only wanted to get back to painting. Like no one was supposed to die in this situation. Just things kind of escalate and got to the point that they were. So turns out the bad guy behind all this anyway, the dude that was supplying them with stuff anyway, ended up, getting killed by the group that he was supplying the chips to. And they, along with the chips, got blown up by Rogers giving the signal, and him and Cole and Layla jumped off the boat when it went up. So that was kind of nice. So when he actually had the opportunity to tell her the truth, he kind of chickened out because Andrew was there instead. And hearing about what Andrew wanted to do, I think he just couldn't bring himself to do it because I think for Cole, it became a situation of, I have to put Natalie's happiness before my own. This isn't just about me, this is about her. But at the same time, it's just not very good at being, speaking his heart. And, he's like, when she pulls up just in time, he's like, came over just to say thank you. She's like, I'm always there for you, Cole, and he's like, yeah, that's why I love you. And walks away, and you see it kind of catch her off guard, like, wait, what? Like, I wonder, it seemed like it was something that took both of them a second to be like, oh, I gotta process this, because for Cole, maybe he didn't really process, like, when him saying that, like, he said it without really saying it, and maybe Natalie would just interpret it as just being like, oh yeah, he cares about me, not that he's still in love with me and wants to try. I mean, to be fair, where they stand right now, I don't know where they would be, but I think the fact is, and it's something that came up, before, that their daughter had brought up before, is the fact is, what matters the most is the fact is that Cole is trying, and for her, that's the most important thing. And I think that would probably be the most important thing for Natalie too, is knowing that he is trying. So we'll see in the end, like, whether anything comes about that or whether you're reading too much into that. We know that Andrew is going to propose, but I'm wondering what Cole said then. Is that going to affect her decision going forward? Because she's happy with Andrew and stuff like that, but she might not be willing to go take those steps forward just because she isn't ready, or the fact of the matter is just because of what Cole said, him being in their lives and everything. And that's just going to be an interesting thing all on its own. It might come down to it. You kind of get the feeling like, oh, like, they're about to get married and then this all comes out, and, maybe that whole relationship kind of falls apart between her and Andrew, or maybe she goes through with it. Anyway, like, it's hard to say, like, which way that's going to go in that regard, but it's kind of sad at the end, but Roger is offering and say, hey, come over to the, because Trisha's like, oh, don't worry, you're going with the girls to the Migos concert. And he's like, no. She's like, oh, no, you're going. And it's kind of like, I guess it's their punishment. Like, Roger's punishment for the whole lying situation is he lost his boat and everything, which I love that he's like, oh yeah, like, he talks to the chief and it's like, Captain Avery said I should come to you about reimbursement. And the chief is like, who's Captain Avery? And then Avery's like, I have no idea, and walks the chief away and kind of looks at Roger with kind of a smug look, like, checkmate, almost. I thought that was kind of pretty neat, playing into this whole Ainsley situation. I really love it. But getting back to it, it's like Roger's punishment is to have to go with Rihanna at this concert and be with her friends and just kind of in this loud crowd and stuff like that. But also Rihanna's punishment is like, now she can't have the fun she wanted to because now her dad's going to be there kind of as a chaperone. So it's kind of a mixed bag type of situation. So it's meant to be their punishment for both of them. So I thought she was going to imply like, oh, we'll both go or something like that. But it's like, I don't feel like that's really your scene or whatever. But it's like, no, that's why you're sending Roger and Rihanna together, because you want them to kind of both be miserable in this particular situation. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens in that regard. It'd be nice to see. We probably won't. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll hear the aftermath of it. So. But I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good